my gosh. Old newspapers are fascinating, but they're also kind of fragile. They don't last through the years very well, but it would be amazing, wouldn't it, to be able to find old newspapers that have articles about your family. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, it isn't real practical to try to find the real McCoy. However, there are lots of digitized newspapers online, and many of them are free. And you'd actually find them in some very surprising places. Today in this video, I'm going to show you one of the most surprising places that you can find old newspapers, and that's Google Books. And it's not just go to Google Books and search for them, but there are some strategies that you're going to need to be able to do that effectively and find what you're looking for. I'm going to help you do that right now. Hi, I'm Louise Cooke. Welcome to the Genealogy Gems YouTube channel. I'm so happy that you're here. We're going to be talking about finding old newspapers today. Whether it's finding stories about yourself, your family, your ancestors, people who came well before you, there are thousands and thousands, if not millions, of newspapers out there over the centuries. And many of them are available over at Google Books. Now, we typically think of Google Books as a place where you look for books, which makes sense. However, we really need to kind of change our thinking about it. Think of Google Books as a place to find printed material. So that means at Google Books, you could find not only books, but printed newspapers, catalogs, almanacs, magazines, anything that would have been published on paper. So with all that being said, those things have been digitized, and if they are clearing the copyright issues and potentially in the public domain, as so many newspapers are, particularly the older newspapers like prior to 1924, there's a really good chance they might be in Google Books. So let's head over there and do some searching. So here I am in Google Books, and I'm looking at some items I found recently. This is just an example of what you might be able to find. This is an old newspaper. It's from May 22nd, 1922. It's the Morning Leader. And I was doing some searches on my husband's grandfather, and I found this article, and it says, "New musical director for Capitol Theater arrives. Raymond H. Cooke arrived in the city Saturday to take over the leadership of the Capitol Theater Orchestra." Well, you can imagine how excited I was to find this. And I love these kinds of articles because newspapers offer a lot more than just obituaries. You can find all kinds of articles on what was going on in their life, what was going on in their community. So that's pretty exciting. So let's head back to the homepage of Google Books and run a basic search. If I'm looking at an article like this, if maybe you're already looking at a book, you can just click Google at the top, and I'm here at Google Books. Now, there's a couple of different ways to find Google Books. Certainly, you can just Google it, go to google.com and type in Google Books. That will get you a link there at the top of the page. Make sure you're looking at the actual Google Books link. Or you can go directly to the URL, books.google.com. Now, remember, we were searching for Raymond H. Cooke. So if I type that in the search field here and click search, those don't really look like newspapers, do they? And in fact, there's a lot of results. Oh my gosh, look at this, pages and pages and pages. That's not going to be very efficient, and right now it's not even really doing a good job because I'm not finding newspapers. But don't worry. This happens a lot when you just type words into the search field. I've got some strategies that are going to help you narrow this down to get right to what you want to find. One of the easiest ways to fix this situation is to go back up to the search box and just put quotes around the full name. When I click enter, or the search button, I find that now all of these results have the phrase Raymond H. Cooke. You can see it bolded there. Now, when we had our past results, let's go back and look at that for a second. We had Cooke, we had Raymond, we had H, but they were all over the map. There was no context. And that's what quotes do for you, is it puts it together as an exact phrase and provides a context so that when Google Books searches for it, it can find only items that actually have that phrase. So that is really, really helpful. But we can do even better than this, because as you can see, we see lots of books. Some are digitized, some are not digitized, but we're not finding newspapers yet. So our next strategy is going to help us dig into the newspapers. And let me just stop and say, if you're new to the channel here and you're enjoying this, I hope you'll click the subscribe button. We do all kinds of stuff like this where we show you how to find family history. And we'd love to have you join us here at the channel. You can click that little bell icon too. That should give you some notifications. Okay, so we're going to go ahead back and put our quotation marks around that phrase again. Okay, and now we're seeing that the exact phrase is showing up in, these are called snippets. So these are little excerpts from the items themselves, and they kind of prove to us that this item does include the phrase that we were searching for. Now, it might seem logical to think, okay, well, why don't we go up and add the word newspaper to the search field and click enter, but it says no results found. Now, remember, when we put a word like that in the search box, it's not explaining to Google what type of material. It's just saying that we're looking for items that have the exact phrase of his name plus the word newspaper. And in this case, there isn't anything. So that doesn't really work. But Google does give us ways to indeed explain to Google Books that we just want one type of material. We want newspapers. And that brings us to one of my favorite tools. We're going to take the word newspapers out because that didn't really help. And we're going to rerun the search. And we're going to use the filter menu. Now, you'll notice it here. It shows up here on our results page. If you don't see it there, you can always click the tools button. The tools button kind of turns it off and turns it on. But in this case here on the results page, we can already see that underneath the main tabs, we see a filter menu. And what we're looking for here is any document. And that's what we got. We got any document, books, catalogs, magazines, newspapers, whatever the printed material was. We can click the drop-down menu here and select newspapers. Watch what happens. I know, it's amazing. We went from millions and millions of items to the one newspaper that Google Books has that has this name. Now, keep in mind, I searched for a pretty specific name, Raymond H. Cooke. And when I put quotes around it, that told Google that Cooke had to be spelled with an E. It also said there had to be a middle initial of H. But not every newspaper article is going to necessarily always have that middle initial H. In fact, if you think about it, when newspapers, there could be somewhere it says Mr. Cooke or Mr. Raymond Cooke or Ray Cooke. So I have to kind of have a little checklist of the variations of ways that a name might appear. And then we can run those through and see and just pick up the little articles that use them. If we come back here and just remove the H, and we rerun it, oh, okay, so we found a few more. Now, these may or may not be the correct Raymond Cooke. Raymond H. Cooke is very specific, and so I'm not surprised that the one result was actually my husband's grandfather, but you can see the difference that that makes. So using the filter and going for the document type is going to make a huge difference in getting through all the other printed materials and just getting to newspapers. Now, here's the second way that you can filter down specifically to newspapers. We're going to use Google Books Advanced Search. Now, you'll notice when you're at the Google Books page, you don't see any kind of a link to the Google Books Advanced Search. You're going to need to run some type of search, it doesn't matter what it is, and get onto a results page. So let's go back and I'm going to run my same search for Raymond H. Cooke with quotes, and click enter. Okay, so we see here that we have our results page, we have any documents, we could filter down to newspapers that way. So let's go ahead and click one of these items because you might see something when you run a search like this and you kind of explore. So you click it and you look at it and you say, oh, okay, this isn't a book. It's actually a newsletter, compiled newsletter. And this is not the right person. So in the new version of the Google Books interface, you'll notice there's a X at the top of the right-hand corner of the screen on desktop. That's how you kind of get out of the book or whatever the item is that you're looking at. You kind of get out from underneath of it. So click that, and this takes us to this page. This is kind of the card catalog entry, if you will, for this particular item, no matter what kind of item it is. But the beauty of this page is that in the search box, you now see a link for advanced search. So as you're exploring, whether you're looking for newspapers or anything else, if you're just kind of feeling like you're not getting there when finding what you want, click out of whatever item you're looking at and come up to the search box and click advanced search. Now you have a special form and you can use this to run your search and be more specific. And in this case, we want newspapers. So if I typed my Raymond H. Cooke, and notice I put quotes around it, but I didn't have to. I could take those out and actually put it under the next field, which is with the exact phrase. This does the same thing that the quotes were doing for us. It makes it an exact phrase. But more importantly, now we're going to come down to content. And you see that we're in all content, but we don't want that. We're going to come over here and click newspapers. Now when we click our search, we got the one newspaper that had the name Raymond H. Cooke in it. Now that might seem kind of more of a backdoor way to get to filtering down using that advanced search form. I'm not sure why they don't make it more convenient and more accessible from all the different pages. However, if you kind of just want to start with the Google Books advanced search form, what I would recommend is just go to google.com and type in Google Books Advanced Search. It's books.google.com, and I think it's /advanced, and then there's underscores. It's kind of complicated. You could certainly come to this page one time and put this on your bookmark on your web browser, and then you'd have it all the time ready to go. But this is another great way to just be able to select newspapers and find newspaper articles. So already we're finding newspapers specifically within this massive catalog of 25 million cataloged books, printed materials, if you will. But let me give you a couple more suggestions of ways to find what you're looking for in newspapers specifically. So if we want to be looking for ancestors, I think it really helps to add kind of time frame and location. So let's focus on location. Where did your ancestors live? If I type in Raymond H. Cooke and I filter down any document to newspapers, it's interesting. When you look at the results, you'll notice that it doesn't give you a location. And that makes it a little more challenging to be able to figure out, is this the right Raymond Cooke? Because people lived in a time and a place, and that's part of what makes them so unique. You can have people with the same name all over the place, but they didn't all live in the same town. Unfortunately, we're looking at this, and the Morning Leader, I don't know where that newspaper was published, and I have a date, but I don't have a location. So one of the things that we could do is come up to the search box. Let's say I had, 24 results here and I needed to filter down. I would just put a space in there and type in Regina. That was the town in Saskatchewan, Canada, where he lived, and click search. And that same article still came up. So it also mentions Regina. Now I know I'm probably in the right ballpark and have the right person. I can do a little more investigation, read the article, and try and see if I can ensure that that is indeed who this is. So adding location, whether it's the name of the town, it's the county where they lived, or the state, can make a big difference. Okay, so we've done location. Now let's think about time frame. While the snippets on the results page show us the dates for the items, we might have a lot of items. Let's look from another person. I've got Lars J. Larson. And when I search for him, I put quotes around his name. I get some items. I'm going to filter again in the filter menu down to newspapers. Okay, great. But there's quite a few. And there's 2 pages worth. And so I know what time frame that Lars lived. He lived from about 1867 to around 1930. So I really, at this point, want to focus in on newspapers from that time frame. Not to say that there might not be a newspaper past the time that he passed away where it talks about him, but I really want to focus on trying to find articles that were printed during his lifetime. And so we can do that again. We're going to head back to that filter menu. Remember, if you don't see it, click the tools button. That's kind of your on-off switch to get this filter menu. And right next to where we filtered down to newspapers, we're going to select the Anytime drop-down menu. Now, anytime means all newspapers from all times, but we could specify starting with just the century. So let's say I really want the first half of his life. I might come down and select the 20th century. Fantastic. Okay, so we found that there are still some articles from that time frame, but maybe that's a little too broad, and you can come again back to this menu and you could select 19th century. So that's even earlier. Now it says here we got no results for the exact phrase. So now it's starting to give us results with fragments of that name. So 20th century was better, but we can do even more specifically. We can click this and come down to custom range. Now we could put in here, I want from 1865 to, let's say, 1930. I'm not really worrying about the month and the date. That doesn't really matter. This will give us the ballpark range we're looking for. Click go. And now, how many have we got? Wow, quite a few here. Why is that? Well, my guess is that it's giving us pages, and then as we get down, let's click number 4, just go way back. Yeah, see, now it's taking off the quotes and it's just giving us all those different words. So we're probably going to find that mostly on page 1 is the results that has the exact phrase. And sure enough, as we look at these snippets, we're seeing Lars J. Larson, Lars J. Larson. So I could come up here and just make sure my quotes are on there. And I'm going to put Winthrop. That's the town where he lived. Winthrop. We've already narrowed down from 1865 to 1930. Click go. And it says, oh, no results. Okay, let's come back up here and put Minnesota. Go a little broader. Just go to the state. And here's one. Fantastic. So as you can see, putting a mix of the time frame and the location can really help you zero in on the right person. Even though people oftentimes have the same names, that's going to help you narrow it down. Now, Google Books has not always had newspapers as part of their collection. Way back when they first started out, they used to have something called the Google News Archive. Now, if you were to search that today, you'd find an archive, but it'd be like the last 10 years or so of newspapers. It'd be more recent newspapers. But back originally when they were putting Google Books together, they were also doing a separate newspaper archive. And this is it. You'll still find it. They've moved the address. It's at news.google.com/newspapers. They no longer add new newspapers to this collection. Thankfully, it's still here though, because this could actually come in kind of handy. When you head to Google Books, you may or may not be sure whether or not they would even have the newspaper title that you're looking for. But if you jump on over here to the old news archive, you can really quickly figure out what they might have for that location, for that name of that newspaper, and did they have newspapers from the time frame for that published newspaper that you need. Now, this isn't a particularly very easily searchable page, but there are a couple things you can do. You can click the letters at the top of the screen to be able to jump to newspapers that start with that letter. So it's the title of the newspaper. It's not necessarily the location, but it's the title. If you know what the name of the newspaper was in your ancestor's town, then you could really quickly go here and look and see, do they have the Lawrence Daily Gazette? Oh, they do. They have 660 issues. Okay, and even better, they tell you from what year to what year, 1884 to 1918. So if you're looking for something from, 1850 or 1940, they don't have it. And here's the thing. It's possible that Google Books might be adding additional newspapers to the Google Books collection now that this is no longer being used. It's kind of hard to tell. Chances are this is probably all that Google Books at least currently has. But it might be worth a quick search just to see if by chance you can search within a time frame and say, do they have anything later? So I'm going to come here and just highlight the name of the title. And I'm going to open a new tab and go to books.google.com. Do a search on this title. And remember, we've got to filter down to newspapers. So I'll do that under Documents. And we find them here. Okay, so we know that they only went into the 1930s. Let's do a quick anytime search and say, do you have anything from 1940 to 1945? No results found. So it looks to me like they really haven't added anything additional. So you can see that the news archive, the old defunct news archive that is still kind of sitting there on that old web page, can give you some important information about whether or not what you're looking for is really there. It can kind of save a lot of time and headache. Doesn't hurt though to just double check. Take the title, go do that time frame search, and make sure that they don't have anything in the time frame that you need it. So there you have it, how to find newspapers over at Google Books more efficiently and more quickly. I hope you'll go down in the comments and let me know, what did you find? Share it with everybody else here who comes and watches the video, because it'll be a great inspiration, and we wish you great success. And if you want to stay in touch with me, of course, we talked about clicking the subscribe button, or head on over to also genealogygems.com and sign up for my free email newsletter. It's a great way to stay in touch, and we'll let you know about all the stuff going on at Genealogy Gems, our videos, and our audio podcast. Thanks so much for listening and watching, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.